Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and of course, that makes this episode 22 of Circles and Squares. How are you, Kate?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. It's we had the Resident Evil, what is it? The Resident Evil showcase that came out today, and it showed a new trailer for Resident Evil Village, which I think we're both pretty excited for. So that was pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, it
Um,
looks great. I'm gonna and the demo dropped as well. They pulled a Nintendo on us. And we're like, it's out
yeah,
now.
right. They've done a few of those. They did one for the last Resident Evil also, and I remember with that one, you could actually I think you could only play it like one time or something, and then it locked you out. So I
Oh,
wonder if I don't know
interesting.
if this is the same or not. Maybe I should look that up.
I'm not sure. I'm gonna try it out this weekend for sure. It's weird. It's a exclusive for PlayStation 5 only for
Oh,
the
really?
demo. Yeah,
I
the
actually
demo
didn't
is
know that.
exclusive for PS5, but then the game is going to be coming out multi-platform, and the game's going to be on PS4, all the Xboxes and like
Hmm.
computer and PC as well, but the demo specifically is just PS5. So
Yeah, I had no idea
we
about that.
are in the
Interesting.
lucky few who are able to actually participate in
I'm so freaking scared to try that with the headset, like in
it.
3D audio or something about. I've never done a horror game in 3D audio. I guess.
Spoilers as to why I haven't played it in preparation for recording tonight is because I'm playing it on the weekend, so I don't have to play it alone.
Yeah. I just didn't get around to it. I have no excuse, but we'll both play it for next time, and we'll talk about that. That'll be
Mhm.
awesome. But Kate, that's not what we're talking about today. We actually have a pretty busy episode planned today, so let's not waste any more time. Just before we get into the show, though, I just want to remind everyone that we do listener mail at the end of every episode. So if you'd like to send us a question, get it read on the show, we'll talk about it, answer it, all that good stuff. You can head over to our Twitter account at CANDSPod. And every time just before we're about to record, we'll send out a tweet quickly. You can reply to that just with your questions if you like, or our email address is listed there as well, circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com if you'd like to send your questions there instead. But yeah, send some more in. We're always looking for cool and interesting questions to answer, Kate. So yeah, hopefully people send some stuff in. We'll get right to that every episode. But this episode, we're going to be talking about, of course, the games we've been playing to open the show. Then we'll move into the news section for the second part of the show, and we're going to close out the show by bringing back an old favorite segment to end for the third segment, which is, in fact, the quiz. So stick around for that at the end. I'll be quizzing Kate on some video game trivia. But just to start the show, Kate, why don't you update us on something really big you've been waiting to tell us about?
Something very special to share with you guys. I want to give a formal good game and bow to Demon Souls remake.
Hooray!
I finally finished it. I actually had it. I was hoping to talk about it last episode, but we were busy with our Hades coverage, which is the new hot game we were playing. So I've had some time to collect my thoughts, and I
Yeah, how
just
does
want to
it
take this.
feel? How does
Oh,
it feel? This
I
is so exciting.
it feels so good. There's a hole in my heart though that does feel like a little bit empty, but I just want to I know I've talked a lot about Demon Souls on the show here, so I just want to take this last opportunity to praise the game and the wonderful work that Blue Point did. It was amazing to get to experience where it all started with such breathtaking art design, and I will say it truly felt like playing a next gen experience. Like upgrading from console to console is always, it's always nice, it's always new, it's always better, but this was the first time that, like, shout out to the PS5, it really feels like more than a step up of just, like, performance. And Bluepoint took absolute advantage of that with the visuals, sound design, the controller integration. It was all phenomenal, and at the same time, they kept the game so faithful to the original in terms of gameplay. So it was great. This is my first experience with Demon Souls, and the game was just I can't believe how ambitious it was. Even in some ways more than the future Soul games, such as like the world tendency, and it adjusts the difficulty of areas depending on how well you're playing, and like
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
doubled down on a lot of like all enemies have very much more apparent strengths and resistances, and those are things that, like, didn't they carried through, but not quite to the extremes that Demon's Souls kinda pushed some boundaries a little bit more, I think.
That's interesting that the
Um,
first game would be the one to kind of set those standards, and then I guess not really be matched in a lot of ways.
yeah, it just seems like they had just had some mechanics that you can tell where they've been adjusted and kind of, adapted for newer games, like, everything about the newer games, like, you can tell they live and breathe Demon Souls. There's so much of it, like, it was such a nostalgic experience because every area I went to and every enemy I fought, like, "Oh, this from Bloodborne, and this from Dark Souls," and, like, you can
Hmm.
see all the
Hmm.
pieces that came together for other games. But at the same time, Demon Souls still holds its own, I think, as a really fantastic experience. Um, I can't claim this quote myself, but I've been actually watching because the first thing you do, of course, when you beat a FromSoft game is you go and watch all the lore and content videos
Of
to
course,
see what you
because
missed.
otherwise you'll have no
Of
idea what the
course.
fuck's going on half the time.
Of course, exactly. So anyway, I've been watching some in the last few days. I've been watching some Vadi Vidya, who's obviously one of the big names in the Souls community, and he I think summed it up really perfectly with a quote he had while he was playing Demon Souls, and he said, "Sekiro has the best combat. Bloodborne has the best first playthrough. Dark Souls 1 has the best contained story. Dark Souls 2 has the best PvP. Dark Souls 3 has the best weapons, and Demon Souls has the best atmosphere." And I think it's right. This game is absolutely chilling. Like the music and you're walking around and there like you hear the rain falling and there's screams in the background and in some areas there's like a haunting singing that's going on. Like it's just so like you feel it in your house and sometimes it's disturbing and sometimes it's hopeful, but it is just absolutely chilling. Um but of course the main thing we all want to know about when we talk about these games is the difficulty. And I think my final opinion is this is the easiest of any of the From
Oh,
Software
really? I was
games.
gonna ask you where it would rank because I know a lot of people seem to think like Bloodborne maybe is the easiest or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm making that up.
I don't know. I think it's kind of biased too. I think with everyone you play, you get a little bit more familiar with them, and it makes the subsequent game a little bit
Yeah,
easier. But I
yeah.
think in general, this one stood out to me as definitely being easier than any of the other experience I've had. I think the areas are quite difficult, and it has some really punishingly long runbacks to bosses. But I think the bosses themselves are very easy in comparison. A
Hmm.
lot of them have, like, just, like, a gimmick you need to figure out, and then they have a more, like, exploitable weakness versus in newer games, like, you sort of just have to stand toe to toe with them and fight them.
Yeah.
And then additionally, I think the main thing, and I think this is just because it's older and they've obviously grown a lot since, but all the bosses have a much smaller move set than recent games, and they don't really change phases, which means they don't really surprise you like newer entries do. And you
Yeah.
sort of like you get their attack patterns down quite quickly, and then you know what you have to do. It just comes down to the skill of like making that dodge or that block or whatever it needs to be done. Whereas in the newer games, you can spend like a few fights fighting the first phase and dying, and then you get to the second phase and it's something totally new you have to learn, which doesn't really happen in this game.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess as the first entry, like that's something they expanded on, right? And then it's just
Yeah,
when you go back to it
exactly.
afterwards, it's like something that's missing. But that's interesting though to
Yeah,
compare.
exactly, and I think there's just also some technical limitations as well with how smart the AI can be, and, like I said, they made this a very faithful remake, so, like, they kept the same AI. They didn't go in and, like, adjust any of the boss fights or make them smarter or give them extra tools. It's how it was when the game originally came out, which I really respect because I think a lot of people would be disappointed to, not be able to have the same
Yeah.
experience.
Well, especially when the game
Um
itself like mechanically holds up so well. It's just like it's probably just the graphic style and like the look of it that was more dated than the actual like bones of the game.
Yeah, exactly. This is just giving it a fresh coat of paint. But other than that, it's the exact same game under the hood. Um, but yeah, so bosses, my personal favorite boss, without spoiling, is the final boss. He has the largest move set. It's like upwards of like 4 or 5 moves. It's great. And the music is amazing. The music's amazing. He's got a really cool visual design. So if you've seen that guy, you know what's going on. And of course, I'll close off on this as my last thank you to Demon Souls. I was keeping track of my boss score, if you remember from previous episodes,
Right. And
and
the
I will
score
let
was
you.
what were we scoring just to remind everyone at home?
I was scoring how many of the bosses, of which there are 18 in this game, I beat on my first try.
Right. Okay. And I'm asking not because I forgot, but because in case the listeners didn't know.
Exactly, of course, of course. You know how much this contest meant to me, and I will let you guess, James. How many of the 18 bosses do you think I beat on my first try?
Well, I mean, judging by your voice, I would say you seem pretty pleased with yourself, so I don't think it's going to be that bad. Um, I'm gonna say that you did 15 on your first try.
Oh, you've overestimated me. I did 12.
Oh,
12
that's
of
still damn
18,
good.
which is I'm pretty impressed with that. So, if you're keeping track at home and you're a Demon Souls guy, I lost to the tutorial boss. Everyone knows how the famous FromSoft first boss. I lost to the I lost to 1-3, 3-2,
Oh,
and
this
then
isn't code.
that's right. There's no spoilers on this show. 1-3, 3-2, and then all three of the bosses in the second Archstone kicked my ass.
Damn.
But everyone else, it was easy. So
I'm
good game,
impressed.
Demon
I'm
Souls.
impressed. Good for you. Does this make you want to go back and play the original at all,
um,
having completed it?
I I don't know. I think there's a few areas in particular where some people have mentioned that the atmosphere has changed a little bit, like just with some of the audio design, and so it sort of gives it a little bit of a different feel in certain places from what I've heard from the community. But other than that, the gameplay is the exact same. So like maybe out of curiosity, but it's just one of those things like it's such a polished experience to play it here on PS4. Like it might be difficult to go back with the like ugly graphics and the not updated animations that look so beautiful and you get backstabs and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think I think like if I owned the game and it was something I'd played before, I think I might, sometimes go back and forth. But I think just being blessed enough to have played it exclusively on the new shiny version, it might be difficult going back.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if it doesn't have anything else like special to add, rather than just the game. Like, because you could easily just look at watch a video of what it looks like, and you could imagine what it feels like now having played this. So
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, exactly. There wouldn't be any content to go back and revisit that you would have missed in the new one. So I think for that reason, it's not quite the same as like when they did the Final Fantasy remake and the
mhm. Oh,
game has
that's I mean,
some
yeah,
very apparent changes. So
totally different argument there for sure.
mhm.
Yeah, well, that's cool, Kate. Good for you. I'm so happy that you
Mhm.
finally completed what I
Yes.
was
One day I'll force you to play
I will.
it.
I'd like to. I don't know. I just, like I always say, it's not that I don't like them. It's just that I feel as though the time commitment for me to actually put into it, I'd rather invest elsewhere. I don't know. Maybe one day.
All
We'll see.
right.
I really love
Okay.
Bloodborne. I will say that.
All
So
right. Well, I mean, if you haven't been playing Demon Souls and that's your excuse, then you better be telling me something you've been playing that is
hey,
good.
look, I'll tell you about The Messenger. I've been playing heck of a lot of that the last few days. And this game is, you want to talk about the difficulty of the Souls genre. Like, this game is hard too, man. This has kind of become the genre that I didn't realize I was kind of really getting into the last few years, I think, is like the 2D action platformer. Um,
Mhm.
Ori's a game that I really, really enjoy. I beat Celeste. Super Meat Boy, that's an old one, but I beat it, I think probably 4 or 5 years ago now. But just like, this is a game I always
Mhm.
think of as something that I really enjoyed. And I really love the challenge of like these precision platformers, not the ones that are like really like cryptically difficult, like some of the bonus levels in Celeste and all those, but just overall, just going through these games is always a great challenge for me, and I've really found that with the Messenger as well. No different. Um, it's a hard fucking game, man. Let me tell you, some of these sections, like trying to get through. But the first thing that when you start this game up, and this has got to be for everyone, I didn't know how great the soundtrack was for this game. It is crazy, like, because it's a retro style game, right? Like, it has the 8-bit
Mhm.
kind of art style, and like, spoilers, it's a couple years old, so I'm just gonna say it. But later on, the game does switch to the 16-bit art style.
Right.
Um,
And does the music change along with the jump up to 16-bit?
It does. Yep. The music and the visuals change, so it completely looks and sounds like a Super Nintendo style thing with the 16-bit, and same for NES. Before it changes, but the themes are the same. Like, the music, you could be hearing the same song, but it'll just be like up-resed into the
Right.
new sound chip. So it's pretty
That
cool.
sounds really cool.
It's really, really, yeah, it's really well done, and they have some other really neat effects too, sound wise. Like, the big one being when you go underwater or any kind of waters around it, it distorts it just like the sound would be if you were to be listening to music above a pool and submerged. It kind of has that
Mhm.
hollow, echoey quality to it. You know exactly what I mean. Like, it actually
Mhm.
sounds a lot like that, and it was a pretty interesting effect, especially since you don't see a lot of that in like actual 8-bit, like true retro games, right? Like, they didn't really
Yeah,
do
that's
that kind of
cool.
thing.
well, that's kind of like a modern thing put back into to an older style, which is that's super cool to see,
So, I mean,
or I
that's
guess
just
to
the first
hear.
thing. Yeah, that's definitely like the first thing I thought of, and they do that early on too, which really like impressed me, I guess. But the other thing that impressed me too, just before I actually talk about like the mechanics and the way the game plays, is it's actually really funny, and it's got a lot more dialogue than I was maybe imagining for what's basically
Mhm.
modern Ninja Gaiden. But it has like this great sense of humor and these characters that kind of break the fourth wall. And at the start of the game, there's this attack on the town, and the elders are kind of debating like when this hero is going to arrive to save them. And he kind of shows up at one point, and he's like, and he says to your character, he's like, yeah, I was definitely running behind, and just like the context and like the way he says it, it's like really fourth wall breaking, but in a funny
Right.
way. And the
That's cute.
shopkeeper too, like is kind of like the narrator of the game, and whenever you go into the shop, you can kind of talk to him and ask questions about what the current stage you're on, and or different items and whatnot. But he's when you the first time you go to his shop, you're like, it doesn't really look like a shop, and your character kind of talks to him, and you're like, what place is this, like where am I? And he's like, the shop. Yeah, you're like, well, this doesn't look like a shop, and he's just kind of like, well, do I look like a shopkeeper? Because he's just like this guy, like this wizard looking dude. It's just like kind of zany humor. I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
I'm not explaining it great, but just
That
trust me, like
sounds
the
good.
writing is funny, man. It's a good time.
Especially when you're not expecting it to, and it kinda just jumps out at you. You're like, "Oh, okay, that's pretty cute."
Yeah, well, it totally caught me off guard. Like the shopkeeper said to me, he gives you these claws of it, like you can climb up walls. Like it's pretty
Mhm.
early on, and he just tells you they're made by a guy named. Oh, he's like, take these claws. They're made by a guy named John Gaiden. And it's like, who's John Gaiden? It's like obviously Ninja Gaiden reference, like
Ninja
just
Gaiden.
thrown in there.
Oh,
It's
that's like, that's awesome. That's like when I was looking I just checked a boss list earlier when I was making my list just to make sure I didn't miss anyone when I was counting my totals, and all of the comments on there were like, "Where's John Souls?" And I'm like, "Who the hell what the heck is John Souls? Like, why isn't John Souls on this boss list?" And it turns out that, like, the community's been taken on storm by this guy who's just been invading people in Demon Souls with the name John Souls, and he's killed enough people that, like, everyone on the internet, they're like, "Oh man, John Souls is the
holy shit.
hardest boss."
Holy shit, that's awesome. Yeah, so John Gaiden maybe made these claws then, same way.
Might be the same guy.
Yeah, but let's talk about like the platforming and stuff too. Just this is the
Mhm.
main part of the game, right? Obviously,
Yeah,
so all
yeah,
this stuff
sell me
aside.
it,
So
'cause
so it's basic. You're running, you're having the same platforming kind of challenges, jumping over gaps, all this kind of thing, moving platforms. But it's just really precise. And if I want to make a comparison, it kind of feels like. Do you remember how the jump in Contra, like the original Contra on NES, you do that kind of flip, but it would never really
Mhm.
land like. It kind of felt boxy, right? It was dated. It feels like that if it was very precise in a way like
Right.
Mario is precise or something. So that's the best way I can
Okay,
relate it to like you specifically. But
okay, yeah, I can
yeah.
picture it, I
So
like this.
that's the feeling of the platforming. But what I really like is this. You can you have basically three buttons. It's just jump. It's slashing your sword, and then you have a grappling hook, so you can like grapple over to ledges and like pull yourself over scorpion style onto like enemies or platforms. And so the combination that they create just with these few simple movement is actually pretty cool. And you get things like you can glide later, um and then so they basically have these foundation of core mechanics, and then they have one really unique one which I like quite a bit, and it's kind of been replicated a little bit in games like Shovel Knight, but they call it the cloud step. And so what this is if you're in the air, if you jump and you slash something in midair, whether it be an enemy projectile or an enemy itself, or they have like these lanterns kind of around that you can use specifically for cloud step. And then once you hit one of those, you can jump again. So the game kind of becomes after a while like chaining things together. So
Oh,
you're
okay.
not just running along the ground, you're running, but then there's a big gap and there's three enemies floating in the sky. So you're like, hit this guy, cloud steps, you can jump again, hit the next guy, cloud step again, and then use your grappling hook to chain over to the last guy, and it'll pull you over to the other side of the room and
Oh,
stuff like
okay.
that.
That's cool. I think that's my favorite part of, like, platforming in games when it has stuff like that, like, spoilers for maybe a future episode, I've been replaying Hollow Knight, and, like, a lot of the platforming in that, especially for, like, hidden areas or collectibles is like you have to like pogo bounce attack off of enemies to like keep your momentum going because you run out of jumps. And I think that stuff always just feels like it always feels so rewarding when you get it right because it seems like a much more difficult situation than just like platforming of your own will as opposed to like using enemies to your advantage.
Yeah, and that's how this feels. Like I'm far enough in the game now. The 16-bit switch happens about, I think I've heard it's estimated about halfway through the game. So
Mhm.
I've crossed that, and I'm about, I would say maybe 60% done at this point, maybe a little bit more, but the game, like, at this point, is really every room is just like chaining different platforming challenges together. And then there is like challenge rooms along the way where you can get special collectibles that are like a death room sequence you got to go through, basically, and it's like a
Mhm.
gauntlet. But the game itself is just so action focused, and it does the thing really similar to Ori, which is why I like Ori more than Hollow Knight, which is a debate I think like
Mhm.
we might have if we were to talk about this genre, just because I think games like Hollow Knight is more focused overall
It's
on
more
like the
focused on the
combat,
combat.
whereas
Yeah,
this game is definitely
absolutely.
more like the enemies aren't really there to fight you; they're there to use them as platforming
Right,
um,
or they're there to
aid
hinder you
or hinder
during
your
your
platforming.
platform.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's just a different style, and I definitely like this philosophy on that. And the other thing I want to tell you about just before I'm done with the messenger is the death system, because this game has a really fresh take. Like, we were talking a lot before on a previous episode about how lives are really dated and a lot of games are moving away from like the life system. And
Mhm.
I think it's really well done in games like Hollow Knight and Ori and whatever. And this one has a really unique one as well. It's very simple actually, which is when you die, there's a lot of checkpoints obviously throughout the levels. Some of them are like the shop, some of them are just regular checkpoints. Um, and then when you die, you just reload back at the checkpoint. But the way that it works is that you get this kind of demon guy that hovers over your body after you die and you respawn. And he
Mhm.
kind of, the mythos is that he brings you back from the dead. But what he does is whenever you collect any money up from the checkpoint up to when you die, where you died, he'll take all the money that you collect. So you can't like go back and die and farm more money and then die again
Oh,
and then
okay.
farm more money. He just takes it all from you until you get back to where you died, and then he disappears. So it
Okay,
keeps it like
interesting.
balanced of how much currency you can collect, and
Okay,
doesn't really
interesting.
penalize you for dying.
That sounds like a kind of like an interesting twist on something like the Souls or Hollow Knight, where you can go kind of like reclaim your souls once you die, and you have that like one chance to go get it back. But it's kind of neat with it sort of like counting for your like backwards progression as well.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say, and I was kind of tossing it around in my mind, like, which of these do I prefer? And I think this actually might be the best one. And I'll tell you why, is because there's no need to even collect the money once you die,
Mhm.
because you won't get it anyway. So it makes your runbacks a lot less tedious because you're not worried about collecting everything on the way. You can just leave it because you're not going to get
Right.
it. So I don't know. I kind of like that aspect of it as someone that's not really, I'm more into just getting the level done rather than collecting everything for the most part.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's interesting. I really like that. That's a take I've never seen before. But it's smart. It's reward. It's like kind of you don't want to die still, but it's not punishing, and then it's also
yeah.
kind of yeah, it progresses you forward still again. I like it.
It's a good one. And I gotta say, like, the last thing is this game. So this game is from a studio, and I had it open and I completely closed that. So that's my bad. Let me just look it up.
You got time.
This is yeah, maybe this may get edited out. It may not. We'll see. It's
We'll
Sabotage
see.
Studio, and so they're
Okay.
working on a sequel right now.
You sabotaged yourself by closing that tab.
I'm so sorry, Sabotage. But they're working on a sequel game right now, which is actually a prequel to The Messenger, and it's a turn-based RPG called Sea of Stars.
Oh,
And
okay.
that game has an amazing looking art style. Also, I think it's supposed to come out in like next year or something. But after playing The Messenger, I'm like totally tuned in on these guys' next project. So I'll be checking out Sea of Stars for sure.
Yeah, that sounds good. Oh, no, so the messenger is on my list. You and another friend of mine just recently kind of both brought it up at the same time and sort of got the like wheels turning in my mind. And I noticed too that, and I double checked just before we started out of curiosity, and it's one of the free games that Epic gave out recently. I think
Hmm.
over their
Hmm.
like stint of giving them like free for like a game every day up until Christmas.
Yep.
So like yeah, yeah, maybe I'll check it
I
out.
recommend it. I recommend it. But
I
yeah,
think I'd like it. It looks good.
yeah, it is. You know what? We got to talk about our PS Plus games next. So why don't you tell me about what is it? Godfall, right? Godfall?
No, no, it's
God Eater.
Greedfall.
Greedfall, damn it.
Greedfall.
These
God
games, man.
Eater.
You know what? I'm so glad we're getting past these games, to be so honest with you, because there's Maneater, there's Godfall, there's Greedfall. I'm like, what
Yes.
game is what game's
Oh
going
my
on?
god.
Which is which?
But when I first, like, got this game for PS Plus, I spent, like, the week lead up to before playing it, like, I didn't know if it was Godfall or Greedfall, like, I've got them mixed up in my mind so many
Yeah.
times, but
See,
it is Greedfall. It is not Godfall, the new PS5 exclusive, it is Greedfall.
yeah, and I only said God Eater because I've been playing Maneater. That's not even part of the
Yes,
conversation.
God is my favorite. Yeah, well, okay, I'll tell you about Greedfall, then you tell me about Maneater, and then we'll decide together if we think God Eater would be a good game. Although I'm realizing this doesn't even work because God even isn't even in my game.
Okay, just tell me
This
about
is an
this game,
absolute
Jesus.
this is an
this is
absolute mess.
this is
I'm
too
gonna
much.
tell you about Greedfall. Okay, so, um, it's kind of interesting. I'd heard of Spider Studio before, which is the devs of this game, because they made those, like, newer Sherlock RPG games.
Oh, right. I
Um,
totally forgot those even happened.
yeah, which were kind of interesting. But despite that, I'd never heard of Greedfall, and it only came out in 2019. It's a pretty new game. So I was kind of surprised that it was just something that it totally flew under the radar, and I think it's kind of a shame that that happened because I don't think this game is a masterpiece, but I think it definitely has something interesting to offer, and it's one of the better PS Plus experiences I've had recently. Um, so I mean, I'm assuming no one else has heard of this game either, but
It's
so I'll
already in
tell
the
you
running
about
for
it.
the best PS Plus award of 2021
Yeah,
at the end of the
it
year.
really is. So I'll tell you about it. So this game is driven heavily by its world building, which is set in basically a fantasy version of like um, Europeans colonizing North America, but with a a twist on it. And so it's kind of interesting because like that's kind of unusual for a fantasy game, especially the like medieval sort of
Hmm.
set ones. So
I
that kind of
appreciate that
drew me
unique
in.
unique setting. You
Yeah,
know, it's
that
different
drew
than the
me in.
usual stuff you get.
Yeah, exactly. That drew me in quite a bit. And so it's got your usual open world RPG stuff. You make your character, you choose some skills to specialize in. I went personally for like a strength melee class with some charisma, but then I also did try out magic later just to see how it played. Um, but you spend a lot of time talking to NPCs in this game. Everything is fully voice acted and it sounds pretty good. And there are tons of dialogue options for each character that builds details about the world and the factions within it. I didn't read or explore everything just due to a limited time with the game, but I did really enjoy delving into the world. And in particular, I liked the Knot faction, which are basically seamen who like deliver cargo and take passengers on sea travel because it's the most like advanced and convenient way of getting around where the technology is at. But by doing a side quest for them early on, you kind of learn that wealthy families often sell their children to the knots to be like
Oh my god!
crewmen. Yeah,
Holy
to
shit!
be like deckhands and crewmen and stuff. And then in return, they get favorable deals and prices for moving merchandise in the future.
That actually
So like
sounds kind of worth it. You know,
yeah,
like if you're one of those families,
you think you'd sell your kid?
I
I
don't
mean,
know. Like
you can have another kid.
it just kind. Yeah, you can have another kid. You're only going to get that market price once. You know.
Exactly. There's some value to be found. But like it was just such a kind of like dark but interesting detail and those kind of things really enriched the world for me. Like it stood out a lot as just being such a unique detail that the writers had come up with. So I think the strength of this game is if you're looking for something to become lost in for like 100 plus hours, this game has a lot of potential. I think the writing is really good. Everything I experienced, it was funny. It was interesting. It was well presented, but there is a lot to get through, and it is rather time consuming. So I don't think this is something you'd want to casually just pick up from time to time. Um, I also found, at least for the quest that I did, there was a lot of backtracking to maneuver around the map and talk to people in a specific order to progress the quest line, which got a
Mm.
little bit tiresome and kind of added to that overall feeling of the game progressing very slowly.
Could you fast travel and stuff to get through that
Um,
or no?
you can later. The game kind of starts you out in this one like port town, which is sort of like the tutorial area. You do some quests there. It's basically in the Europe part of the game, and then and it's relatively small. It's kind of like the Europe section. You do some quests and sort of get to know the flow of the game, and then after you've done a little bit there, you sail to the new world that you're colonizing, and then once you get there, the map opens up. It's massive. You do get fast travel options, so there's definitely ways to like circumvent that. But I just found there was a lot of like talk to this person, and then your next quest objective is talk to another person, so you have to run and go get them, and then it's to progress, like, we'll talk to this third person, but then they're kind of, like, back in the area where the first person was, so it was just sort of
Mm.
a lot of, like, going through the same area, and it wasn't like
Kind of like padding. It seems like a little bit,
yeah,
like busy work.
kind of, I think it was not so much that it was super tedious, but it was just the game already felt like it took a long time to progress or do anything because you're listening to so much dialogue. So that extra time in between just made it feel like I'd sat and played for a couple hours but hardly got through anything. Um, and I think, like, this kinda stuff is just maybe an example of, like, my main issue with the game, or where I think it falls a little short, is there's just a bit of an absence of polish. It feels very much like a lower budget game, especially coming from something like Demon Souls, which is maybe not
Oh,
fair.
what a harsh competitor.
Yeah, and then also too, like, to also keep in mind that this is a very ambitious game, right? Like, making a massive open world game is not the same as, when you're a smaller studio making, like, a
The
2D
Messenger.
platform or something, right? Like, yeah, exactly. The scale is very ambitious. And you can tell where the focus and the resources went. Like I said, the voice acting, the writing. The game actually looks quite, pretty, especially the character models. There are definitely some funny things you just sort of expect to see in an open world game, like NPCs getting stuck briefly on walls, or my personal favorite.
I know exactly what it is. The picture you sent me, right?
Yes, my personal favorite. This one NPC, and I had to talk to her a few times, like, for a quest line, and we're in her house, and every time I'd finish talking to her, she would just turn around and then walk into the corner of the room and just stand there staring at the wall. And
That's the
then
life, man. That's like what the
it's
cat
so good.
does.
Yeah, it's like what the cat does, exactly. Like, she's seen something we're not seeing, but, like, you'd talk to her, and then she'd, like, come talk to you in the middle of the room again, and then you'd finish, and she'd just turn back and walk to that, like, she loved that corner. It was so good, like, and those things are minor and, like, mostly they just make you laugh, but, like, they're clearly not intended. I think, like, the main gripe with the game is it never feels great to control. The character doesn't really feel like they're naturally moving around the world, like, looting chests only work if you're standing at the perfect angle,
Hmm.
uh, and the combat I find is largely unresponsive. Um, so I guess to get into that, it's sort of like a Ghost of Tsushima style where you have your light and heavy attacks, you got a dodge and a parry, and then you also have a focus meter that charges up quite quickly, and then when it's full, it lets you do like a stronger attack, and then all of your attacks are based off of like what type of weapon you're using. Um, there is no I guess one of the differences, there's no stamina bar, but there is a mana bar for magic that regenerates, so you can't just, like, sling spells
Yeah,
indefinitely.
yeah, yeah.
But unfortunately, unlike something like Ghost, it's not very engaging. I find neither your character nor the enemies really feel like they have any weight to their attacks.
Does it have
Um,
any haptics or anything on PS5?
no, it does not.
Mm.
There was no haptic, at least not that I can tell. Like, I didn't have a bow or anything that was maybe a little bit more of an obvious weapon, but there isn't really any integrated, like, rumble, and, like, just the animations are kind of like they don't they're hard to tell exactly, like, when they're connecting, like, they just it's just really missing kind of, like, that weight or that meat to the fight, which is a shame, and I think it's also sort of I played it on normal, and there are other difficulty options, so this might, not be a complaint, or something I could have adjusted, but for the few hours I played on normal, and at least all of the regular enemies I fought were just totally stun locked, so you can just hit attack for a guaranteed win, and magic was even easier because you can do that from range.
Oh man, this seems like the antithetical of combat systems to Dark Souls. After coming off that,
Yeah,
like man,
and exactly, and so it was kind of a big shift, and the other thing too, and I think what was, like, it's a subtle thing for this type of combat, but I think what really elevates them a lot is positioning and timing are important. Whereas in this game, like the hit tracking is hilariously far. So regardless of where you are in a fight, you like press your attack and you'll just like slide and like zoom over them. It's hilarious. And so you're never like positioned if you're out of position, you never whiff an attack and you can get punished. Like you're always on your enemy. But that being said, there was a surprise boss fight, which was you should look it up because it's really funny. He's basically the store brand knockoff version of the cleric beast.
Yeah.
He looks just like him. It's great. But that was actually pretty fun. Like it's still, it was still the same base combat what you're doing, but he was a little bit more interesting with some of his moves, and he did quite a bit of damage. There was a little bit of pressure going on, but at the end of the day, I feel like with this kind of a game, the combat isn't required to be amazing. It's not going to sell the game, and I can't necessarily recommend it on that merit alone. But I think that's not what I'm looking for in this kind of a game. It's serviceable enough as like a secondary focus,
Yeah, like a
and
vehicle is part of the story. You're like, the main part's the story, right? Like the world and
yeah,
characters and everything.
exactly. And it can be easily circumvented by things like sneaking or completing a quest in a more diplomatic way. So um, it didn't necessarily, like, pull my opinion down of the game too much. In general, like, I do wanna have I have positive sentiments about this game. I'm quite impressed with it, and I'm genuinely curious to see where the story goes. I don't see myself playing more in the near future, although that's mostly due to a backlog of games I'm really interested in, not necessarily this game's shortcomings. And as I was thinking about it, honestly, I wish there was, like, a book set in this universe because I
Mm-hmm.
could definitely, like, stay up doing, like, "Okay, one more chapter." Like, it's intriguing, but it's a big time commitment, and I feel like, you gotta have the time and the dedication to sit down and really, like, sink your
Yeah,
teeth into this game.
that's the thing. There's just so many good games these days that if something's like this, it's like, oh, it's a 7 out of 10. Well, that's pretty good. But do you have time to do that when you only have a few hours a day to play something? And it's the same problem we always talk about, right? And that's too bad
Yeah.
because it sounds like there's some pretty cool stuff in this game, to be
Exactly,
honest.
like, I wish this game had come out when I was, like, in high school. I had a smaller game library, I wasn't buying as many games, and I was kind of had more time and the willingness to hop into, like, "Oh, this is gonna be great," like, the prospect of it being, like, 200 hours of content was exciting instead of, like, "Oh god, that's gonna take a long time, this is overwhelming,"
Yeah, well,
right?
that's
Like
that's so true though. Yeah, exactly. Or
yeah.
especially like if you're in high school right now, or if you don't have a lot of income, like if you just have PS Plus, this is a great game to be put on that service because it's gonna give you something to do for a long time. The story's interesting, and it's if you're relying on the PS Plus library to provide you a lot of content every month, and it sounds like this is like an awesome option for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I hope I wasn't too negative on it, and like, like it's got its shortcomings for sure. But I genuinely had fun, especially fighting the cleric beast. But like, it is a good game, and I would overall, as long as you kind of are interested in this style of game, something dialogue heavy, story heavy, it genuinely does seem like it could be a pretty interesting game. And I've even after playing it, even putting it down and knowing like, okay, I'm done. That's enough for the podcast. It's come into my mind a couple times. I'm like, ooh, I bet this is gonna be a plot twist later. Like I'm sort of like theory crafting. And that's a really good sign. That means that it at least made a strong impression, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, you
absolutely.
know what's so funny, Kate, is I feel like we have a lot of similarities in our opinions on our PS Plus games for this month because Maneater, you said a couple things during your little spiel there on what was that game? Godfall, Greedfall. I'm just kidding.
Greedfall.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
We're gonna
Greedfall.
title this episode wrong. It's gonna be like Godfall and Maneater. And be like, whoa, they
Exactly.
got the new Godfall game. We did
Yeah.
not.
So Maneater, you were saying like it's a good game at its core, but it just has a couple little things that holds it back from being what would otherwise be like a really high quality experience, I think. And so this is Maneater from Tripwire Games, and I was looking up Tripwire. They're the studio that did Killing Floor, if you've ever heard of that or seen it on PC.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I never played that, but Maneater, I guess, is my first time with them. So this game is like a really awesome game at its core, and I love the way that it's framed. So for those that don't know, this is a game where you play as a shark, and it's completely unlike anything else. You're pretty much just swimming around and doing shark stuff, and it's fun. Um, uh,
Gross shark
but the
stuff.
interesting part of it is that the game is framed in such an interesting way. It's framed like a shark documentary. And so
Oh.
it starts off and it's like a reality TV, kind of like obviously played up and meant to be goofy and like a Borderlands kind of humor style. And it's
Mhm.
like a shark documentary. This fisherman catches your mother, the shark mother, and kind of gets her on the boat, goes to kill her and like gut her and all that. And then
Aw.
all these baby sharks come out and you're one of the baby sharks. And that's like the origin of the story. And then
Wow,
from
that's
then
kinda
on,
dark.
it is kind of dark. Yeah, it's like a revenge tale. And the camera that you're watching through is supposed to be like the TV camera as the film crew is filming the shark, and they'll occasionally be saying some facts about the sea and cracking some jokes and stuff. And it's actually pretty cool. It's a really neat way to frame a narrative rather than just making it like dialogueless. 'Cause I don't know otherwise how you'd add like story to this kind of game, because a shark's illiterate and like,
Right. It
so
would
it's
have to
kind
be
of
like a
cool.
Shark the Literate. It would have to be like one of those, like, shorts, like, the, like, 10 minutes before the movie that sometimes
Yeah,
some, like,
yeah.
animation studios used to do, or just, like, tell you, like, and it was always, like, the saddest fucking story in the world, but, like,
Mhm.
no
Mhm.
dialogue, and you just see the characters, like, grow old and die, and it would just be
Oh
awful.
god. Yeah, well, this is a little bit, I mean, there's a lot of gruesome deaths, but maybe not quite as sad. But yeah, so the game is framed really, really well. And the game has a lot of cool ideas, but it makes it damn difficult to get into it because the controls are a fight with the camera. And well, I'll get into that first. The controls, right? Okay, so you swim around,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like if you could envision using both sticks to control like a drone or something. How you
Okay.
can envision how that would feel, right? Like moving the camera with
Mhm.
the right, drone with the left. Fair enough. It's fine, except for the fact that obviously as
Do
a
you
shark. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, do you have, like, full, like, 360 movement, like, every direction?
No,
Or
you
is it,
kind of
like,
have to.
2D?
You Oh no, it's 360. Like it's a 3D
Okay.
environment. Yeah,
Yeah.
you kind of have to swim forward though. Like you can't really drift or like make really sharp turns because it kind
Okay.
of it moves like realistically somewhat to how a shark would actually be swimming around.
Right.
Um,
I'm
but
sure
that's
I'm sure they contacted many, marine
sure. I'm sure they did. I'm
biologists.
sure they did. I'll
Yes.
let you know when I roll credits. But the problem is, so and then you got your bite is your main attack, and it's on R2,
Mhm.
so that's fine. Everything's good. The problem is that there's kind of two different control schemes for this game. One of them is when you're at the surface of the water and your fin is sticking up, and you can kind of control as you go along the top, just steering left and right. And then there's more of the 3D controls as you're under the water. And
Mhm. Okay.
the button assignments don't really change, but the game just feels a bit different. And what you're supposed to do is kind of adjust your depth by either looking the camera where you want to go, or you can use like X to go down in little increments and square to move up, just to kind of make little fine tuning adjustments. Fair enough. But the
Mhm.
problem is your main attack on R2, which is your bite. I found that when I'm biting other fish and like eating them, consuming them, the bite kind of inherently makes you want to move up towards the surface.
Okay.
And the problem with that is it really begins to make you struggle with the camera, because largely you don't want to be above the water when you're in combat, because it's hard to see where the fish are you're trying to attack. And sometimes there's like a human fishermen that come and try and shoot you. So if you're trying to just attack, an alligator that's trying to eat you below the water, all of a sudden you're biting him, and then you're also getting shot by hunters up on their boats because you've moved to the surface. And so, and also like to compound that too is like your camera kind of gets stuck at the surface. You lose where you are. Like it just becomes a bit too much of a struggle. And I really find that's taken me out multiple times from um fights I think I might have won otherwise, or I just kind of, it's easy to get lost where you are too in relation to like your
Right.
objective. It'll be
And
like
you're
kill fish in a certain area, and you kind of can't keep track of exactly where you are sometimes.
right, and you're at a disconnect, you're not feeling a one-to-one connection with your shark counterpart.
That's right. That's right. So it's just a little weird, and I mean, I'm still enjoying the game despite the control. But it's
Mhm.
definitely something that needs to be brought up, and an area in which I think, like, if they would have made that a lot smoother, this game would actually be something I would really be raving about, I think. because
Mhm.
the game itself is really fun. Like you're going around. The game doesn't do a great job of kind of pointing you in the right direction. Like I showed you the map the other day, and the map
Oh
itself
god.
is quite hard to
That was
read.
that was the ugliest map I think I've ever seen. It was terrible.
It's I mean, it makes sense once you kind of look at it and you get to know what all the waypoints are, but the problem is
Mhm.
there's a lot of quests that take place in like these kind of underground bunker type things where you go through like a sewage drain gate, and you go through these pipes and you're kind of in these man-made structures. But the problem is that those don't really appear on the map, so you kind of have to guess like where the entrance to that is going to be, and then you're kind of going
Mhm.
along the walls and the boundaries, or sometimes you have to jump over top of a fence that gets lowered in a certain area, or like a pier that's been knocked down, and those aren't always clear. So it's a lot of not trial and error, but like hunting for things that other games would kind of just expedite you past, so you don't have to use your time up looking for them.
Right, and that doesn't feel like kind of like a part of the gameplay, like you're supposed to be, like,
No.
hunting for those things. It's just kind of it's like a tedious extra step,
Yeah, well, I mean,
kind
if
of.
you compare it to some other games, like other games like you to look around and use your environment to
Mhm.
figure out where to go, but for this game, I feel like they just didn't waypoint it very well,
Yeah, and I
unfortunately.
guess it's probably tough too with, like, an underwater water setting to, like, give you as clear of, like, visuals on exactly where you wanna go, and, like, approaching things at a certain angle might be different depending on where you were before, so I can see why that might be
Yeah.
difficult and, like, why having, like, something a little bit more obvious would have been very beneficial.
Yeah, it's I mean, I think they were in a tough task just because it is hard to jazz up looking, underwater and how that's going to look different. And it
Mhm.
does look a lot different in a lot of places. So I do give them credit. Like the environment does look a lot different, especially when you're above the surface. You can kind of see like, a city in the background or a beach or some skyscrapers and stuff. So you can kind of tell which of the sections of the map you're in by the appearance. But
Mhm.
within the sections, it's kind of hard to tell where you are sometimes. Um, unfortunately, because the game itself is pretty fun. Like you're going around, you got a lot of different objectives, which range from like kill 10 of this type of fish to take out this predator, which is like an alligator or another bigger shark or something, or maybe not a shark, but other bigger predatory fish and whatnot. And you kind of just, it's got this nice loop of like you're going around, you're completing your objectives, you're collecting like little underground troves of like buried treasure and stuff, and then the more you collect, the more you find, the more other fish you eat, you gain experience points to level your shark up, and a couple different other currencies as well, like DNA they don't. I don't even really remember what they're called, but there's like 4 or 5 different currencies, and you
Hmm.
eventually like your shark grows, and then you also have a pretty expansive skill tree as well, beyond like just the size and the power of your shark. So I recently unlocked the ability to have electrified teeth, which was like, it's not exactly supposed to be a realistic game. But they've definitely like they like stun enemies now when I bite things, and you pour your currency into those, and you kind of get to mix and match like what kind of teeth do you want, what kind of a special ability. Like I have a sonar ability, so I can kind of scan like where the enemies are and objectives and stuff. So it's pretty
Hmm.
cool. Like and I like the fact that it's not trying to be overly serious, because otherwise I think they would really limit their move pool and like the options of
Hmm.
movement and stuff. Like it's kind of cool they're taking a bit of a supernatural type
That's
of type of route.
that's interesting, and I had a very, like, different expectation of what this game would be like, not knowing much about it and just knowing that it was a game where you were a shark and it was called Maneater. Like, I expected it to be kind of more of like an arcadey, like, silly kind of like just mess around and it's kind of like a Just Cause or like
Mm-hmm.
you know how people like to like sandbox and like GTA, like that kind of an experience. But like that's I was not expecting there to be like skill trees and stuff. That's kind of
Yeah,
neat.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like it's super in depth, it's not like a huge RPG or something crazy
Hmm.
like that, but it definitely has like a level of depth to it that is respectable for sure, especially for what it's
Depth.
trying to be.
Depth, because it's in the ocean.
Yeah, nice. But yeah, it's a cool game, and I think that much like your game, it's just, if it didn't have these couple flaws because they're lower budget titles, and
Mhm.
because they're not like, from some huge studio, that the idea itself is cool enough to where if you're interested, I would definitely recommend it. But just know that it's not a perfect game, and it's one of those, like, if you live with its flaws, you're gonna have a good time.
Mhm.
And
Well,
yeah.
that's great. I'm so glad that this month was a good month for PS Plus because I feel like recently we've both been a little bit down on some of the offerings that
Yeah.
that we've played. But this is overall, I would say, like, a big win this this month's January PS Plus. 2021 is off to a good start.
It is, and we get Destruction All Stars next month as well, which I'm sure we'll be talking about on the show.
Yeah, I'm
Whether
looking
one or
forward to
both of us
that.
play that, yeah, that'll be fun. I've been looking forward to that for a while, ever since they made that announcement. Really,
Yeah, it looks good. It's never a bad time getting like kind of like an arcadey like. I'm assuming it's couch co-op. That'll make or break it
yeah,
for me, I think.
yeah. I think it will be. It looks like the kind of thing that if it didn't have that, you'd be, you know, disappointed, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, Kate, we've had a long discussion here. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about the news. All right, everyone, welcome back into the show for the second part, which of course is the news segment. And Kate, we have two stories today. One's a pretty quick little one to start off, and we'll start off with this. There is a user on Reddit who says they've received a special email from PlayStation after earning the Platinum Trophy in Miles Morales, and they were congratulated for their achievement, and they got a little prize from Sony, I think, too, like a photo frame for the photo mode in Miles Morales. So not a huge like bonus, I guess, but something cool and a reward for a platinum trophy, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's just a cute thing. Like, I mean, obviously, if you're platinuming the game, you're really into it, and I'm only imagine how excited you'd be to unexpectedly get like an email and get a little bit extra than just receiving the trophy itself. So, I think it's cute.
Yeah, and I know there was this is from Push Square, of course, and they mentioned too. Actually didn't know this, but apparently platinuming God of War a couple of years ago actually earned people a different PlayStation avatar. So that's kind of cool. I like these little bonuses for the trophies. I've always been in the camp that like it would be so cool if you earn, the on Nintendo they have those gold points, and like when you buy a game you earn a little bit of money back to your next purchase. I always thought it would be cool if, earning the platinum trophy in a game got you, even like 2% off your next purchase or something. Just a cool little incentive like that. I've always been a huge like advocate for that, even though I don't think they'd ever do something, but it's cool to have any kind of reward.
Yeah, I agree, and I understand if they don't make it like, like a monetary value kind of thing, but I think it's totally good to at least have these few extra things just to recognize like, hey, like and especially too because like platinum stuff is usually quite difficult, or at the very least it's very time consuming. So it's just kind of a nice thing to say like, hey, we really appreciate you went above and beyond playing our game, and like, here's a fun little collectible, and like it I think it would encourage me at least to like try for more platinums because the trophy itself is something that I don't really care too much about. But if I was gonna get like a icon or like, like a photo mode, or like I would unlock something that would like trigger that dopamine switch in my brain a little bit more, and I would maybe like, ooh, what can I get? Like I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, that I'm getting close to the platinum in Ghost of Tsushima right now, and so I
Mhm.
wonder, if I'm gonna get any prizes for that. Probably not. I haven't heard
I
anything
hope
about
so.
it, but
Fingers crossed. I'm skeptical just because, like I haven't seen anything,
yeah,
and
no,
I assume that you're not the first person to have platinum Ghost of Tsushima.
that would be pretty sad
But
if I was first at this point.
but hey, you never know. That would be really cool, and maybe they'll add something in, like
Yeah,
maybe
I think
they'll ghost drop it like the multiplayer.
yeah, I think it'd be cool. Also, you said Ghost Drop, nice one. I think it would be cool if they did like a cool like a profile picture for any platinum you get of like maybe just like a PlayStation Studios game, just because it's a bit of clout, to show off on your profile. I like
Yeah,
that.
I agree. I agree. I think there should be like a picture or something. Like it can't be that hard to like make it, and it's nice and a good incentive.
I agree. Kate, let's move to our second story here, and this is from the PlayStation blog, and it's something that I think we're both, you know, interested in the stats and like the behind the scenes stuff of these sales numbers. And since 2020 just ended, we moved on to a new year, and we have the list outlined here of the top downloaded games from 2020 to read through and just maybe speculate and talk about. So the PlayStation 5 list, I guess, isn't quite as interesting as the PS4 list because the console came out so late in the back part of the
Mhm.
year. But the top 10 most downloaded games on PlayStation 5, and of course that's something to keep in mind too, is this is just downloaded numbers, not physical sales, so take it with a grain
Yeah.
of salt. But the top 10 goes as follows. We have Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, number 1. Number 2, Spider-Man Miles Morales. Number 3, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Number 4, NBA 2K21 Next Generation. Number 5, Demon's Souls. Number 6, Madden NFL 21. Number 7, FIFA 21. Number 8, Sackboy: Big Adventure. Number 9, Immortals: Phoenix Rising. And number 10, Watch Dogs: Legion. Anything stand out for you? I mean, these are pretty much the only PS5 games you'd
Yeah.
expect, but
Yeah, exactly. The one that stood out to me the most and kind of made me laugh was the list because it's got this is the US Canada list. There's also the Europe list. And obviously they're similar, but there's some differences. But what cracked me up looking at this side by side is the first 5 games for each regions are the exact same, except in the number 4 slot in US Canada, it's NBA, and in Europe it's FIFA. And I just thought that was a cute little like cultural difference because
yeah,
obviously like basketball is much big here and football is big there, but other than that, they're like exactly the same.
yeah, and interesting too. Speaking of football, like Madden, it's not even on the UK list, and to me that's a little bit surprising. And it's not because I think NFL football is like really popular in Europe, but I thought it would be more popular than NBA 2K21, which actually does make the top 10 in Europe. So I don't know. I would have thought
I
Madden
think
might have been there
I
instead.
think it was that trailer with that sweaty guy. That sweat like just looked so good.
Yeah, they're really into nice sweat physics in Europe,
I
I
mean,
heard.
it
So,
was it was an impressive trailer to watch.
um,
um, but yeah, otherwise it seems pretty good. I was kind of I was well, not really surprised, but the other thing that made me laugh is like Assassin's Creed Valhalla being number 3, and it just kind of made me smile because it's like I feel like that, like, franchise is, like, the Nickelback of games, and everyone, like, rags on it all the time. They're like, "Oh, stupid Assassin's Creed, those games sucks," but it's like, they consistently sell so well. So it's like, well, people obviously like these games and are playing them. Like, yeah, there's definitely some, like, valid criticisms you could give about the company, but it's like the perception of them online versus the actual
mm,
reality of how well they sell is totally different.
yeah, I think Valhalla is actually like pretty well regarded. Actually, like a return to I don't know, like a little bit less like checkbox. Like this is Assassin's Creed. We're gonna climb the towers. We're gonna collect all these banners and whatever. Like this one I heard is maybe a little bit more um of a revival for the series, I guess. But I mean, I
Yeah,
haven't played it,
I
so
I yeah, exactly. I think I've heard some criticisms as well, but it's definitely an improvement, especially on the last one, which I think had some, like, microtransaction issues.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I think people are happier again with this one, and, otherwise, yeah, it seems good. Spider-Man's up there. Demon's Souls is 5, but obviously that's because people all wanted the physical copy, so
obviously, yeah,
we
it's
was
number one.
fine
Actually,
otherwise,
if you're to
obviously.
calculate the real sales, it's probably number one.
No, that there's no way, but, I mean, that is something to, consider, although I don't know, like, how much it comes into consideration and what those if that how much that would change the list, but
Yeah. Let's run through the PS4 list quickly as well. Again, these are the US Canada numbers. So number one for PS4 we have Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, same as number 1 on PS5. Number 2 Grand Theft Auto 5. Number 3 Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Number 4 Minecraft. Number 5 Ghost of Tsushima. Number 6 The Last of Us Part 2. Number 7 NBA 2K21. Number 8 NBA 2K20. Number 9 Final Fantasy 7 Remake, and number 10 Madden NFL 21. The one that stands out to me first of all is like, how do Minecraft and Grand Theft Auto 5 keep selling this fucking well? Like, I
right?
understand they're big games, I understand they're popular, and they're like, you know, games for people will know these games even if they don't really follow the industry. But at the same time, at what point does everyone who wants Grand Theft Auto 5 do they already own it? Because this game is always like number 1, 2, or like top 3 in every sales chart. Like, does everyone not just own this at this point? How are people still buying it?
Yeah, right? I think it's because everyone's buying it on all the different consoles it keeps getting released on. So, like, I think every person who owns Grand Theft Auto 5 owns, like, 5 copies of it. And, like, same with Minecraft. I think too as well, like, obviously those are massive games, but I think, like, 2020 probably helped them along because I think they're games that are, like, even the top, like, 4 games on here, like, obviously Call of Duty is always gonna be really big as well, but, like, those are games that are, like, online playable with your friends, and I feel like Minecraft, especially and Grand Theft Auto are, like, games that just you can kind of hop in and, like, casually hang out with your buddies.
Yeah.
So I feel like a 2020 environment, like, really helps give those a little bit extra value.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. The one
Um
that sticks out most to me is Final Fantasy VII Remake being down there at the bottom, because I feel like that's a game where that's definitely one for like actual people, like people that follow the industry more closely. You know, like I don't think the average person that owns a PS4 to play like Call of Duty and those games at the top, I don't know that Final Fantasy really would stick out. Like that's a traditionally like quite a nerdy, you know, franchise. So to see it number 9 is like that's really impressive, and it shows to me like, you know, maybe the average person that owns a PlayStation actually is more interested in like the quote unquote hardcore kind of games than I thought.
Well, I think that yeah, and I'm glad I made the list. And I honestly like looking at it. I think it may have possibly been higher, but I feel like a lot of people, and this I think goes for Ghosts and Last of Us as well, because like those two are like the big PlayStation exclusives, and Final Fantasy is such a like almost like a collector's item because of how far back the franchise goes, that I feel like a lot more people are more likely to buy those physical than they are to buy like Grand Theft Auto
Mm-hmm.
physical.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like I was joking with the PS5, but I think PS4 like that maybe comes into it a little bit more. Like I could see a lot of people like buying the Final Fantasy specifically, like they would want a physical copy because like they have a physical copy of all the other Final Fantasy games and they've been like buying these games for years. So
Yeah, that's a
I
good
feel like
point.
maybe it could have done a little bit better. I don't know if like maybe it could have broken up the 2 NBAs in a row, which is hilarious.
That's great. They're both on there. Of course, the top of Europe's list, we must shout out like FIFA 21, number 1, FIFA
Mhm.
number 2, FIFA 20. Like it's the same thing, but just with
Yeah.
FIFA in Europe. And those are actually ahead of
It
Grand Theft Auto
it
and all the Call of
shocks
Duties.
it shocks me how popular those games are. Like I know they're popular and I know to expect that, but it always surprises me every time they're on these lists. Cause like to me, they're the kind of games that like I expect like if you're into the sport, you pick them up. And I guess like that just proves how massive sports is as a cultural thing. But
Hmm.
like I just don't see a lot of people who are like not interested in the sport but then playing the video game. Like
Yeah, I
it seems
guess.
to me like they're like they in my mind they're kind of like a niche thing. And then they're
Yeah.
always being like there's like 4 sports games on every single list. It's insane.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing though. You're not like a traditional sports fan, really. Like those are some of the biggest hobbies in like the whole world, right? Like
Yeah.
sports is a universal language, so it kind of makes sense. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe the cross section of like sports fans and like game players, the gamers or whatever, like is bigger than we think. But
I guess
interesting
so.
stuff.
And I think it's great. It's just I think I just underestimate in my mind how big sports is when it comes to people, cuz like the only people I know that play any sports games are like people who follow the sport in real life. Like I don't know
Yeah,
anyone who plays the sport game but doesn't, but doesn't care about soccer in real life. So like
yeah. Well,
I
especially
guess
since
like
they're like full price $60 games. Like you really got to be
yeah,
invested. It's not
exactly.
like you're
And
gonna
they
pick it
come
up for
out
a weekend.
every year. Like you have to buy 2020 and then 2021 and 2022
Don't get
like
me started. Don't get me started. I love the
and
NHL
some
games.
people
They don't make these lists, but man, it's the same shit.
Yeah, that's true. NHL is always is the one that is not on the list.
Yeah,
It's
it's just not as popular as the other sports, I don't think. In Canada, like our population is just not high enough to
mhm,
get it on these type
to
of lists
push it.
instead of like NBA or FIFA or like the big sports in the US and Europe.
Mhm.
So
Right, if US and Canada got split into
oh, if
different
Canada,
lists, then
yeah,
potentially.
if Canada had its own list, I'm sure NHL 21 would be like top 10 for sure.
Mhm.
I would say, but yeah. Anyway, cool list. Always fun to see some sales numbers. But why don't we take one more break, Kate, and then I will come back and quiz you on some video game trivia. So prepare your brain, and we'll see you in a sec. All right, everyone, welcome back. We are here for the last part of the show, and today that means we're doing a fun quiz. It's a return to form for us, Kate. We haven't done a quiz since episode 14.
Yeah, we've been so busy, but you know what? I've been so looking forward to this quiz. They're just always so fun.
Yeah, we did a lot of them to start off in the first, 10, 12 episodes of the show, I guess. And then things have
Mhm.
just gotten really busy. I guess, the end of the year comes up and you got game of the year discussions and different, trailers and news to break down. So we got pretty busy, but it's nice to get back to doing one of these.
Mhm.
I think so. It's my turn to prepare a quiz. If you'll remember back on episode 14, you quizzed me on some video game button prompts and
I
quick time
did, yes.
commands and all that. That was a
Press
good quiz. So
press X to start was the quiz.
press X to start. Well, this quiz I've created for you this time, and this one I didn't think of a really good pun. I'm going to be honest. I just named the quiz this,
Mm.
that, or the other because the premise of this quiz is I've developed 7 questions for you. And they are all multiple choice questions with 3 answers, and you just got to tell me which one is the correct answer, and
Okay.
if you want to justify it, whatever you want to do.
Sure. Seems
So
simple enough.
seems simple enough, and we're gonna learn some cool facts along the way. All right.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. So for those of you playing along at home, let us know how you did as well. Give us a tweet at CNS Pod. Anyway, Kate, ready for question 1?
I couldn't be readier.
Let's do it. Okay. Question number 1. Which of these PlayStation 1 games sold the most copies?
Oh dear. Okay.
Option A,
What do we got?
Spyro Year of the Dragon.
Oh, that was a good game.
It was. Option B, Cool Borders 3.
Fuck.
And option C, Gran Turismo.
Oh shit, I have no idea. If it's Cool Borders, like I want it to be Cool Borders because that's like what the fuck was Cool Borders.
Hey, we played Cool
Spyro,
Borders. I think we rented it on N64 one time or something. Yeah.
was it like the one with like the soundtrack? I always remember the 2 snowboarding games. It's a snowboarding game.
Oh, it's
or
not
is
SSX. It wasn't SSX. It was like
okay, SSX,
it was the
I
one
think
where
so.
you're like kids on snowboards, and it's kind of like a kart racer, but you're snowboarding.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I do remember that. Okay, Cool Borders. Okay, that game was cool.
Well, it's in the name.
Spyro it has to be. Spyro Year of the Dragon. Year of the Dragon is like a couple into the series too. So I feel like Spyro would have been getting some good traction by then. Year of the Dragon was the one that we owned.
Correct.
And I think I haven't played 2. I've played the first one in Year of the Dragon. I think Year of the Dragon is like miles above.
Oh, it's a great game.
First
That's one of the best games on PS1 in my opinion.
Gran Turismo
But how did it
probably
sell?
sold. I mean, like Gran Turismo probably sold well because it was like a more like mature adult offering, whereas like Spyro is more like that's the game you bought your kids. So I think I'm between those 2. I mean, Gran Turismo was like pretty big. I'm gonna go with Spyro. Seems like the bait. It's like like a quintessential PlayStation title. It seems like a trap. But I'm gonna go with Gran Turismo.
Final answer?
Maybe. I'm gonna go with Gran Turismo, but it's Spyro. I'm kicking myself because I played into the trap.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you the answers as we go on this one instead of doing it at the end. I think we'll change that up. So I'm going to tell you, Kate, you're going Gran Turismo. You are correct. Gran Turismo actually sold just over 3 million copies back on the PS1.
Wow, that's impressive.
Which was over double the other 2 games. Spyro coming in at just under 1.5 million, and then Cool Borders 1.2 million.
Wow, that is impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I couldn't believe how close Cool Borders and Spyro were. Actually, I would have thought Spyro would have blown away Cool Borders, but
right? I guess not. You can't underestimate how cool that game was.
Literally. Okay, let's move on to question 2, Kate. We are 1 for 1 so far. You're doing really well. Question number 2 is this. According to the website How Long to Beat, which of these PlayStation 2 sequels has the shortest average completion time? Is it A, God of War 2, B, Jak 2, or C, Ratchet & Clank Going Commando?
The only one of these I've played is God of War 2. And I feel like it didn't take me very long to beat it. But is that enough information to go off of? Probably not. I'm gonna go with Ratchet and Clank. I think those tend to be kind of like shorter, more condensed experiences.
Gotcha. And no love for Jak, huh?
Well, I think it's my gut feeling is telling me it's Ratchet and Clank.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, unfortunately, you are incorrect. Ratchet & Clank, according to How Long to Beat, is about 13 and a half hours long. And God of War 2 can be completed in 12 hours on average.
Oh, so close.
So it was close. It was close. Of course,
I should have remembered it took me exactly 12 hours. I knew that.
It's crazy.
Funny? It's like, that's so nice. Like, games used to be so much shorter than they are now.
I know. It was something nice about that, wasn't it? You could sit down and kind of beat a game within a week's time if you really put your time into it and whatever, and just kind of be done. Simpler times,
miss that
man.
in a way.
Simpler times.
Yeah, I guess like they didn't have all these like side quests and extra things to do and collect and.
Yeah. Anyway, Jak 2 takes about 18 hours on average, so at least you didn't fall for that.
Oh no, I would never.
All right, question number 3. Which of these roguelites has the highest overall score on OpenCritic?
Okay.
Number 1. Yeah, I didn't put Hades on the list. I figured that would be a bit too obvious. Number 1, Enter the Gungeon. Number 2,
Mhm.
Dead Cells. Or number 3, Rogue Legacy.
Oh, shit, I've played all 3 of these games, and all 3 of these games are
They're
fantastic.
damn good.
They're damn good. I
I'll
think it's
give you a
Dead
hint here. I'll
Cells.
give you a hint.
Okay, okay, let me hear the
One
hint.
of these is obviously the winner. The other 2 are tied.
Okay. Oh, cool. Cool. I'm gonna give it to okay, Rogue Legacy 2 is still, like, in its, like it's not fully out yet.
I think it's
It's
yeah,
still in, like,
it's
a
a beta or
beta.
open beta or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, it's still an open beta. I'm gonna say it's gotta be Dead Cells. I'm pretty sure that game did phenomenal on ratings, and it is, like it is so good.
you're correct. Dead Cells overall score on OpenCritic is 89, and the
Mhm.
other 2 are tied at 84. So all strong showings, but Dead Cells is the consensus
Yeah,
favorite.
they're all very 3 very good games for sure.
Right. Question number 4, Kate. We're halfway, and you're 2 out of 3 so far. This is impressive. You're doing really well. Question number 4. Which of these popular franchises did not appear on the PlayStation Vita?
Oh, okay.
Number 1, Assassin's Creed.
Uh-huh.
Number 2, Bioshock. Or number 3, Metal Gear.
Oh, fuck. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I don't BioShock. BioShock seems like a weird one to have on the Vita. Because Metal Gear and sorry, what was the first one?
Assassin's Creed.
Assassin's Creed. I'm pretty sure Assassin's Creed did? BioShock is my, like, gut feeling because like, there's less games in the series,
Yeah.
so I feel like they're less likely. They had, like, 1 and 2 and then Infinite. So, there wasn't, like, a specific Vita game, which I know a lot of, like, franchise, like, God of War had, like, a couple games that were only on the Vita, and, like,
Hmm,
a
hmm.
couple, like, franchises did that, so I don't think BioShock had an extra game. It just depends if one of their games was, like,
Yeah,
also
port.
on Vita.
Yeah. And to
The
be
Metal
fair,
Gear
God of War only had PSP games, I think. I don't know if there was a Vita God of War.
oh, yeah, you're right, it was PSP. It was before the Vita's time.
Although let's not forget
Um,
Uncharted Golden Abyss on the Vita. That does exist.
right, okay, well, it's a good thing that's not in this quiz. I don't know, like, I feel like Metal Gear is kind of the trap answer because like, they're so weird and they have all those like, tons of games, but then maybe they just never Vita'd. I'm gonna go with BioShock. BioShock is seems like a safe answer.
All right, you're correct again. Bioshock is the
Oh,
answer. Um,
wonderful.
the other 2, Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation, was on the Vita. And then
Okay.
the Metal Gear HD Collection is on the Vita as
Ah,
well. And the reason I
okay.
know this is because I've been looking for a way to play Metal Gear Solid, which is my retro game for the year. I'm going to go back and play, but
Great.
you can't find Metal Gear Solid anywhere. And even on this
Yeah.
HD collection, it only has 2 and 3. It doesn't have the original
Oh,
Solid. So I don't know why that
interesting.
is, but that's
I
frustrating.
interesting. That is really strange. I mean, like, not to promote that, but it seems like almost like emulating is kind of your only option when it comes to some of
Yeah.
these older games, and, like, that sucks to do because, like, you don't wanna you'd prefer to buy the game and play it, on a convenient
Yeah, I think
platform,
I
but
got
it's
I got a
your
friend
only
that's gonna
option.
lend me the disc for on the PS1, so I'll just pop it in my PS2 or whatever. But
Okay, that's
um,
awesome. That's a good way to do
yeah,
it. And,
uh,
you get the classic real experience.
exactly. I got a CRT TV as well, so that's gonna be awesome.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Set that up.
okay, question 5, Kate. Let's move along. Which of these? This is my favorite question on the quiz, by the way.
Okay.
Which
It's
of
gonna be the one
these?
I get wrong then?
If you get this right, this is gonna be amazing. Which of these is a real game?
Okay.
A. Final Fantasy VII Snowboarding.
Oh my god, I hope so, and why haven't I played it?
B. Cooking Mama Bartender Edition. Or C.
Okay.
Sonic's Photo Studio.
Hmm. These all seem like they are real games, and I'm amazed I haven't played them. Cookie Mama Bartender Edition sounds like the fakest, but I bet you that is like a Japanese exclusive that we just never got. So I think that one I can for sure see being real. Final Fantasy Snowboarding just is hilarious. Sonic Photo Mode, we had like a Pokemon photo mode game, and not like Pokemon Snap, like obviously that's a that's a Pokemon photo game, but I feel like we had some like weird game that like came in like a cereal box that was like color Pokemon and like have
Oh, it's
pictures.
Pokemon Print Studio.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
right. We have Pokemon. So if like Pokemon can get that, Sonic can get that. Um, but then
The
there's
logic
I think
follows.
Final Fantasy snowboard. I think Final Fantasy snowboarding is fake because I feel like that is maybe something I would have heard of.
Yeah,
Just
well,
like,
remember, one of these is a real game, two are fake.
oh, 2 are fake. Okay, fuck. Then it's Cookie Mama. Cookie Mama bartending for sure. That's like a weird Japanese game that never made it here. I'm doubling down on that.
Okay. Uh, sadly, you're incorrect. And the real
No.
game is Final Fantasy Snowboarding.
Oh, no, I no. Well, I got that wrong, like, twice because I got it wrong assuming the question was one way and then got it wrong with the correct version.
Yeah, yeah. So the origin story on this question is I was originally going to ask you a question of which of these franchises has the most games in it. And I was going to list like Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, and go through on their wiki pages and like count how many entries are in each series. But I
Okay.
quickly realized that was going to take me like way too long because Final Fantasy just has so many entries and it
Yeah.
was a waste of time. But as I was counting the Final Fantasy games, I came across Final Fantasy VII Snowboarding. And I was like, I have to include this in the quiz somehow because this
That's
is too
so
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah,
We
it's
need to
literally
put
like Cloud on a snowboard going down a hill, and I think you have to just dodge obstacles and whatever. It was a mobile game back on 2005.
That's awesome. So canonically then, do I need to play this before or after I play Final Fantasy VII
Well,
Remake?
we're gonna have to figure that out. I'm gonna have to try this somehow. The only problem is I don't think you can actually download it anymore. I think it was taken off of the App Store or whatever in by 2008. So yeah, too bad. I'll have to watch a Let's Play though because that sounds like very interesting.
I love
Okay,
it.
question 6. Two more questions left. Number 6 is what was the first PlayStation 2 game to feature online play?
Mm, okay.
And your answers are A, SSX Tricky,
Yeah, it's tricky. It's
B,
tricky.
He's Tricky, Dance
It's
Freedom.
tricky.
Uh,
Yeah, the
option
only
B,
line I know.
Star Wars Starfighter, or
Okay.
option C, just for you, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater
Ah!
3.
Oh, no. Is it gonna be Tony Hawk?
I don't know.
Oh, would you do that? Are you cruel enough? Yeah, you know what? Alright, I'm gonna go with my boy. You know how much I love Tony Hawk. I bet you he had multiplayer, and I bet you this is something these Tony Hawk purists always go off about.
You're right. It is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. Maybe that was a bit
Something you
obvious. Like obviously, I was gonna pick
I
that one
knew
as
you
the
couldn't help yourself.
answer. But this is actually interesting. This fact actually comes from the Guinness Book of World Records.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I wrote a little excerpt down out of there just so I could get it right. But the earliest PlayStation 2 game to allow online play was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, published by Activision, which was released in 2001. And the reason it was first was because, unlike later online titles, this one could be connected to the internet without using an adapter, just by putting you connect your PS2 to a dial-up connection, I guess. And that was the first game that you could do that with. So Tony Hawk has got a place in the Guinness Book of World Records, not even for skateboarding, but for a video game.
Wow, that is you know what? I would almost say that's impressive, but the game was awful, so
You're such a hater. Oh my god. All right. I have one question left for you, Kate, and this is going to be the one that's going to bend your brain the most. I can already tell you this. You're
Alright.
really going to have to think, okay?
Okay, oh, this will crush all the confidence I've been building up from the last 6 questions.
Yeah, you got four right out of 6 so far. Like
Yeah,
that's pretty damn
I'm
good.
impressed. Some of these quizzes tend to be quite difficult, so
Okay, so here you go. Number 7. How many different minigame archetypes, I should say, are there
okay.
in Crash Bash?
Oh, shit, yeah,
The
okay,
original
okay.
Crash Bash. And so I'm not talking like obviously there's the one like the pinball game, right, where you're all in one side of the
Mhm.
screen. That counts as one game. It's not like each
Okay,
version
not
of the
each like
pinball.
a magnet pinball
Yeah,
isn't a second okay.
exactly. So the answers are: is there 6, 7, or 8?
Okay, well, let me run through them. So you've got the pinball,
Mm-hmm.
you've got, Pogo a Go-Go,
Yep.
you've got the tanks, there's that, like, arena fight with, like, all the TNT boxes,
Mm-hmm.
there's the polar bears, and my options are 6, 7, and 8?
6, 7, and 8. Yes.
Well, I've come up with 5, so that's not good. What else am I missing? There's the tanks. There's gotta be, like, some things that get added in later that don't
Well,
weren't
the
like
thing is, there's a few games that only some of them only show up at the later warp rooms, right? So
yeah,
unless you're playing the later warp rooms all the time, you wouldn't be playing certain game types a whole lot compared to
right.
like the base 4 or 5.
Yeah, those are the 5 that, like, I know for sure in there. I'm trying to think, like, what else what else is in there? There's, like, another one with, like, the TNT and you, like, throw TNT boxes at each other. That's 6. I don't think it's 8. There's, like 8 is too many. I'm between 6 and 7.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I'm gonna feel like the second you tell me, it's gonna be like, "Oh, of course, of course." Problem is, like, that game too, like, I don't remember the other worlds so much, like, I remember the first couple ones because I played them so many times, but the later worlds, like, I was so young when we had that game.
Yeah, and it's not like you go back and play it all the time either.
No, and, like, it was, like, challenging, right? So, like, it wasn't I mean,
Yeah,
like
some of them could be tough. Like collecting some of those gems and relics on like the challenge modes of those
mhm.
maps, like some of them are really, really hard.
Yeah, like, a lot of them were, like, you had to beat in, like, a certain amount of time, and it's like, you just you just couldn't push people off with your polar bears, no matter how hard you try. I'm gonna go with I think there were 6 games.
6 games?
Yeah, I think there were 6.
All right. Well, I must inform you, Kate. Unfortunately, there are 7 different game
Oh,
modes in
no.
Crash Bash, and they are as
Well,
follows. There's
mhm, go right
ballistics,
ahead.
which is pinball.
Okay.
Polar push, which is the polar bear
Right.
riding push each other off the iceberg.
Mhm.
We have pogo pandemonium, which is the pogo stick jumping in a circle.
Right.
Probably my least favorite game in Crash
Yeah,
Bash.
I think that was the worst one. I think pinball was, like, the best one,
I
and
agree. I
pogo was
agree.
the worst
I agree.
one.
We also have crate crush, which is throwing the boxes at each other.
Mhm.
And then the ones you missed are tank wars.
I got tanks. I
Oh,
got
did you?
tanks.
Oh, my mistake. My
The
mistake.
tanks is one of the ones that comes in, like, the 2nd or 3rd world. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
an original.
yeah. And then the other two are Crash Dash, which is where you are in the race car.
Oh, yes, Crash Dash, yes, oh my god, I missed that one.
Yeah, and then the last one, which was the one. This one's a little weird. Stick with me. It's called Medieval Mayhem. Is the last one. But this game is weird because it's actually like it's called Medieval Mayhem, but every time there's a new version of it, the game is like completely different. If you remember, there's one of them takes place in like a windmill, and you're on that rotating platform. And you're trying to like jump through your color of hoop or something. There we
Hmm,
didn't play these ones that much, and so Medieval Mayhem's the one that's kind of foggy in my memory, also.
yeah, I don't doesn't really strike a bell too much. You know
Yeah,
what this makes me wanna do? Like, we need to like, replay sit down and, like,
we should.
we need to remaster well, spoilers for next for the little our listener mail question, but man, they need to remaster Crash Bash.
They really, really do. Okay, speaking of listener mail, maybe we should move into that. But just before we do, like, congratulations on getting 4 out of
Yeah.
7 on this quiz. This is pretty good, and especially since like those
4 out of
Metacritic
7,
ones and the.
that's not bad. That's better than I expected here, so
Well, good job, good job. Anyway,
thank
Kate,
you.
what is our listener mail question for the week?
So we have a question from Mike, and he asks, "Do you think video game developers are running out of ideas as remakes become more popular and original IPs less so? Where do you think the next generation is headed in terms of great new games?"
Well, thanks for the question, Mike. I don't know. I really think that there's nothing to worry about personally in terms of creativity and everything. So there's kind of two arguments though. Like I don't know if, what your opinion is, Kate, but I think that when you're talking about the big AAA kind of studios, you do see a lot more repetition in terms of like sequels to games. God of War 2 or God of War 2018, I guess, is kind of a reboot, but it's
Oh,
still the same franchise.
yeah, definitely God
Last
of
of
War 2 is
Us,
like sequels kind of like I would put that in the same sort of bucket as well. Like
yeah,
they're
yeah.
original games, like, they're new ideas, but like there are like piggybacking off of a pre-existing game.
Yeah, but then you also have stuff like Ghost of Tsushima, which is a brand new IP from Sucker Punch, and you have, I think the space you see the most creativity and difference is actually in the indie space now. Like you have amazing games
Yeah.
that come out in their single standalone games: Stardew Valley, Celeste, Cuphead, Undertale. There's a ton of different variations going on. Like the Messenger we just talked about earlier in the game Hades or in the episode. Sorry, there's a lot of different creativity in that space, and I think that they're kind of two sides of the same coin. If you want to divide the industry in half like that, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I agree. I think indies is like, where my mind went first. Like there's so much creativity in indie games and they're always like trying something new and kind of redefining like what kind of experience games can give you. But I think also in AAA, like I think like we're seeing a lot of remakes, but I don't think that's maybe like due to the fact that they're running out of ideas. I think that's due to the fact that first of all, like players and like consumers, you vote with your wallet, right? Like we're buying up and eating up all of the remakes because we're nostalgic for the older games. We want to see them come out and with a new fresh coat of paint, and like I think like there's really a big push for it in the consumer sense. And then also like it's kind of like a safe bet for them at the same time, like it's kind of like almost guaranteed that if you remake a really popular game now and you do at least a pretty good job, it's gonna sell well.
Yeah.
And also, like, I've got to imagine, like, it takes maybe less resources as well and is a slightly, like, more cost efficient way to put out a big budget game than to create something totally new. So I feel like those are kind of more the reasons that you see remakes as opposed to them, like, not having fresh ideas.
Yeah, I totally agree too, and it goes back, I think, to one of the conversations we had on a previous episode about like how just the cost of these games, like, and especially in the AAA space, is just getting to be so high when you're talking about like rendering the graphics for the new consoles and like putting in the ray tracing and doing all the facial capture. Like, there's such a big monetary investment now that I think that when it comes to those bigger AAA studios like Naughty Dog with making The Last of Us, is like the safe bet in terms of sales is sequels. And so
Exactly.
they have to make sure they're getting that return on their investment, right? And I don't
Yeah,
think it's necessarily like a lack of creativity, is because there's still a lot of creativity put into the sequels. Like they end up being a lot more evolved. Like The Last of Us 2 is a lot more evolved in terms of its gameplay and the refinement of its mechanics and the intelligence of the AI than the original Last of Us. But it's just the creativity was put into improving on the base game, not into like developing a completely new um series, I guess.
yeah, exactly, and it's like a win-win, right? Because it's like, they wanna make a sequel, they wanna see, like, what Nathan Drake gets up to next, like, oftentimes when you're making the first game, you're envisioning what the second game is gonna be like, right? And, like, you've kind of a story mapped out for these characters, and you you wanna make a sequel because, you want to as a developer, who's creating these games, and the customers who are buying them want it because they wanna see what happens next, and they just want more content in a world that they're interested in. So, it's kind of a win-win, and then the developer, like, they get to reuse some of the assets from the first game. They don't have to, like, like, rebuild a world, and they can maybe reuse the same engine for a lot of these things, so
Yeah.
it's convenient on top of it, but I don't think they're running out of ideas. Like, we're seeing even in the AAA so many new games, like, Ghost of Tsushima is such a good example, and, like, even, like, the Jedi Fallen Order came out recently, or I guess it was a few years old now, but, like, that was really big, and, like, we're
Yeah.
seeing, like,
We
Elden
got
Ring's gonna maybe come out sometime, and that's awesome, and, like, Cyberpunk is a totally new big thing,
Yeah,
when it
Returnal's coming out pretty soon. That just had a showcase the other week, and that game looks pretty interesting as well. So there are
yeah,
like big games coming out that
and
are new as
there's
well.
tons that, like, E3 was that we saw, like, tons of new games, like, like, the Ken of Spirits game looks really neat that's coming out at
Yeah,
some point, and
12
there's
minutes.
yeah, like, I think there's not a lack of ideas. I just think that we're not like, seeing so many remakes is a new thing, so it's, like, kind of taking some of the attention of
Yeah.
the media away from, like, what would have normally have just been, like, new games, but
Yeah, well, the media also only covers the stuff that. Well, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say it only covers, but whenever there's a big sequel or something that's a known quantity, I feel like those are likely to get like the top headlines because it's something people are familiar with. They're going to click on the article, whereas you kind of have to dig a little bit deeper to find the one-offs and the standalone experiences. Like Spiritfarer is another one too
Mhm.
that was really popular and kind of got people's attention at the start of last year, and that doesn't have any pre-existing mind share before it came out, and then it caused some waves. So it just didn't grab the headlines the same way like Uncharted 4 or Uncharted 5 whenever the next Uncharted's announced. Even though that'll
Yeah.
probably be quite different than the previous games in the series and might even be developed by a different studio. But just because it's Uncharted doesn't mean that it's going to be this same paint by numbers kind of formula, I guess.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, like, the framing that I would put and the concern isn't for the lack of ideas or creativity. I think the concern is more like how much it costs to make games in
Hmm.
addition to, like, maybe some poor ways of advertising and, like, the way that the media runs and how it kind of circulates and, like, what's getting spotlight all the time. So I think those are kind of, like, the core issues when in terms of, like, if we're gonna be seeing less interesting or unique offerings in the future. Um, but I think there's like we said, there's tons of examples to kind of show that, it's still going in a good direction.
Yeah, yeah. And the last thing I'll say about it too is that I think there's a lot of creativity um, within genres as well. Like if you want to take, for example, battle royales as a genre, like if you on its face value, I think there's not a lot of creativity. It's just like 100 people dropping on a map, and the last one standing wins. Like there's no room for like creativity there. But if you look at the big players in that space, like Apex, Fortnite, Warzone, each of them is creative in the way that they differentiate themselves from the other game, where like Warzone's going
Mhm.
for that realistic military kind of feeling. Apex is kind of a hero based thing, kind of like Overwatch, but and then Fortnite has the silly dances and the building, and it's very unique in that way. And it's also third person. So they're all
Right.
bringing something
And
different, and you can kind of pick like which
and
aspects you like.
you can make it much more broader as well in the sense of like, well, Fall Guys is like a party game version, like a silly, goofy, like mini game battle royale. And then you have like Tetris 99, and that's like it's fucking Tetris as a battle
Yeah,
royale.
Mario 35, same thing on Nintendo as
Exactly,
well.
like, these are really creative things that people are doing. They're, like, taking the genre and imagining it in a different way, and, like, I just like, obviously, the space is filled with so many things now, and you're gonna see a lot of similarities and remakes and reboots and things that are familiar, but I think that's just because there's just so much stuff to look at now, and the new creative things are still there, they're just sharing that space with things that already exist.
And if you're a person that's really into like a certain genre of games, I feel like that's what you will likely pay attention to, and then maybe you won't really see some of the creativity in other areas of the industry. Like if you're just one of those people, say for example you're really into fighting games and you just play like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, maybe Smash Bros or something, and then a few other things on the side, but you might not realize some of the creative avenues that other genres are developing as well. So I
Mhm.
don't know. There's a lot of ways to unpack it, but I think the
Exactly.
industry is like really strong and diverse these days. To be honest.
Yeah, I think so. We're seeing, like, development studios, and also there's been a lot more, push recently to get more, like, diversity for studios, like, they've been opening up, especially for the indie scene, a lot of, like, different studios from around the world with people in different cultures and backgrounds, and I think that's also gonna add to more, like, unique games coming out just because they're gonna be pulling from different inspirations.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, I didn't even think of that.
Mhm.
Hmm. Well, if you've thought of any points that we didn't cover in this discussion, please let us know. Again, you can get in touch with us at CNSPod on Twitter. We got a link tree there if you want to find other ways, our email, YouTube account, all that good stuff. You can check us out. Kate, it's been a pleasure as always. And I guess that'll be the show for today. So we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time, and thanks for listening. The intro and outro music for Circles and Squares was produced by friend of the show, Matthew Chan. Interlude music is from Scott Gratton of the Free Music Archive. Our channel art was created by @unreasonable on Twitter, and our brother Alex is the designer of the Circles and Squares logo. Thank you all for listening and supporting the show.